1967, in the winter, we flew a Cessna 411 N4956 Tango, as it was affectionately known, to Quito, Ecuador, to be based at the U.S. Embassy / State Department to help out with logistics, especially between Guayaquil and Quito. The scenes you see here are flying around the country of Ecuador. The ship that you saw there, we were out there, that's the Guayas River there, going into Guayaquil, was a tuna boat. At that time there was the 200-mile limit, and there was a lot of politics going on, and we would go out and take photographs of the boats out there as proof that they were or were not in the limits. There we were with Lorena and the kids, Paul and Nancy at the time, at the monument of the equator, which is, there's the line of the equator right there, and it is located just north of Quito. Quito is at 9,300 feet, and there's a good shot of Cotopaxi. Of course, you live up there in the Andes, and good shot of the volcano. Of course, there are many, and those are the twin Ilenisas. All of these you can see from the Quito airport. That's Cotopaxi, just south of the city. And occasionally on Sundays we'd go out on a picnic. NASA had a station just south of Quito. This C-46 took off to the north of Quito, heavily loaded. When you lift up the gear, the props hit the runway, and of course the aircraft started to vibrate, and he just couldn't fly anymore. So there's just not many places you can land up there in the Andes, and he was extremely lucky. He chopped the power and just dropped it right on top of a little hill there. There's a good site of an active volcano. We flew to Bogota from Quito to drop off the Latin American Secretary of State, and took a tour of the salt mines. And on my way back to the hotel, our taxi, which we kept telling that he was not driving like he should, hit a truck, and we ran away from the accident and didn't want to get involved. Upon our return to Quito, we received orders to pack our bags and head down to Montevideo, Uruguay. We had no maps per se, and so decided the weather was great. We'd just head right down the coast over Guayaquil, then down to Lima, Peru. That was the airport in Quito. And that afternoon we went on down to Arica near Antofagasta on the border with Chile. Spent the night, and next morning we went down to Santiago, Chile. There's the runway in Santiago. And there's a good shot of the Santiago Tower, Land Chile DC-7, downtown Santiago. We loaded up with chocolate, I remember that. Then we took off in the morning to Montevideo, going through the Andes. The weather was very cooperative, so we flew between the peaks, and recall that we were around 17,000 feet. Had the weather been bad, of course, we would have had to go much higher, but comfortable. It was about a 4-hour flight. From Santiago, we flew over Mendoza and Hui, and over to the river and into Montevideo. Here we are now in Montevideo, and this is April of 1968, and there's where the presidents would meet. This is the Punta del Este. Some good shots of Punta del Este. Lyndon Baines Johnson, Dean Rusk, and the presidents of each country, including Honduras, Oswaldo Lopez, showed up. It was a 3-day meeting of all heads of state, and we were there to service. Actually, we were there a couple of weeks earlier because we took the Secret Service back and forth, and this is a shot of my room out of the hotel there in Montevideo, checking out the bridges and highways, and then we would do flights over to Montevideo or into Mendoza to pick up wine. Another shots of downtown Montevideo. This is right in front of the Victoria Plaza Hotel. It was almost like a 45-minute drive from the airport into downtown. We decided we'd stay out there a little closer to the hotel at the beach. C-141 from the United States Air Force. There were several of those there backing up all the president's needs, things like his bed, washer, dryer. Uruguayan Air Force was composed of T-33s type aircraft and a bunch of Goonie Birds DC-3. We also, there's a good shot of the destroyer. And the President, Air Force One coming in. And we were told to park behind it as soon as it landed. Should an attempt be made on, I guess, his life or an emergency, they wanted us to be right there to evacuate as needed. There I am standing next to Air Force One. Aircraft from the various presidents. San Rafael Hotel, where they held their meeting. You could not have picked a better time. March, April. They're just finishing their summer and the weather is excellent. See there the propeller of the aircraft. Cessna 411 at the Punta del Este airport. No longer exists today. Climbing out. Well, we're on our way back to Quito, Ecuador. We flew from Montevideo to Mendoza and then loaded up with wine and fuel and headed up to Antofagasta and into Lima, Peru, and spent the night and into Quito. Here's a Junker Ju-52. There's our 411 at Quito, where we kept it at the ramp there. Good shot looking towards Ileniza, to the south of Quito. Shot of Cotopaxi. It was sort of our beacon. That is when you could see it. The weather was clear, which was not all the time. Here we're flying around the mouth of a volcano. Thought we'd do that, get some interesting shots. Here is a C-54, commonly known as a DC-4, landing in the jungles, on the eastern side of the Andes. This is Shelmera. This is the first oil camp, and that's the remains of a C-46. Loaded with dynamite for the oil fields, and it blew up. I bought this little monkey. Sorry to say, it did not survive the trip back to Quito because we had some weather and I had to climb high and not enough oxygen. And it and another beautiful bird I had bought for Lorena did not make it. Locals. We have the Jimeros and the Aucas. Aucas are that's in Colorado, India. There's a C-47 from the Oriente Airlines that flies into the jungle. Some of these airlines were built and run by Germans. That Ju-52 eventually was bought and is now in the museum in Germany, Frankfurt, owned by Lufthansa, and it's the one that you hear about or see that is flying in tours around Europe these days. It was owned at the time by Captain Drexel, a German, and I knew the captain well, and his son also was a pilot. It's me and the kids, and there's one was Lorena in the yard, a big yard there, small house and a big yard. It's a view of the volcano from the house looking south. Good shot of Quito. It's always interesting when you left Quito, all you had to do is fly about 1,000 feet after takeoff and you were on top of the clouds, and worked your way down to Guayaquil and let down just north of the city and make your approach. But the weather sometimes could become very, very nasty. You get those summer thunderstorms, kept you busy. There's a wrecked ship on the Pacific coast. We flew from North Ecuador down to Esmeralda, and down to Manta and Salinas, and there's a shot here of Loja, which is very close to the Peruvian border. Again, backyard of the house, and Bibi and Paul. There's Paul, out of oxygen. Our suburb in Quito. Waterfall. Good shot of the Junker Ju-52. There's a rare shot of the de Havilland Comet 4. Used to be owned by the Mexican airline and bought by Aria, a local Ecuadorian airlines. There I am next to the 411. Aria went out of business, but the Comet used to fly Quito, Bogota to Miami daily. Salinas, very close to Guayaquil. It's now a big resort area. I've not been back, but I will try to make a trip over there next time I go to Guayaquil and look at it. Got some good friends that are retired there. There's Paul on the wing of the 411, close up. Sorry to say that the 411 was lost when we took it back to the States by Captain Stud Livingston when he was flying it from Tucson to New Mexico. He lost his life on the aircraft, and I did another video DVD for his family, which is 4A, and is in the library if you'd like to look at it. Okay, after spending a year in Quito, we packed up our bags and headed back to Tucson. We stopped in San Jose, Costa Rica to spend the night and get fuel, and flew up the Pacific coast of Central America into Tapachula, Mexico, where we also picked up fuel, and on north to Mazatlan, and then into Tucson. The C-54 that you see there on the beach was one of the aircraft that was of the Bay of Pigs. The captain who was on this aircraft, Yuli Littleton, and I flew together for Intermountain, the same company I was flying the 411 with. And the story is that when they flew to at night on a training mission to the Dominican Republic and made a drop, there's Tapachula. On his return, they were coming in low and the engine hit a tree, and they started vibrating and flew out over the ocean and trying to keep the aircraft in the air. They were going to beach it, and next morning when they went down to inspect it, they found a dead buzzard inside the tree and the engine. There's a shot of U.S. Customs in Tucson, Arizona. That was Chuck and my sister Juanita, who went to the airport to meet me. And then the next couple of days we spent around Green Valley resting. While in Tucson, I took the 411 and did some flying in the area. Here is the Twin Beach C-45 that I also flew trips to Phoenix and California, El Paso, or wherever we were needed. The DC-3 usually were trips all the way up to the Canadian border, Idaho, etc., taking Indians. And we had other aircraft that you'll see at the end of the this is around Marana, and now we're on our way back to Ecuador. Word got out that we'd done such a good job that the oil company that was owned by Randolph Scott, the movie star, contracted us to take a group of geologists down to Ecuador and do magnetometer work, mapping, etc. And so I spent a summer down there. But on that trip, Lorena and the kids remained in Tucson. If I recall, we stopped in Acapulco, and these are the shots coming in the evening. And after we checked in the hotel, they told us that we had to go back to Houston to get some paperwork. And then we flew from Houston to Belize, and Belize down to San Jose, Costa Rica, and there direct into Quito. That black antenna there you see from the nose of the aircraft going up over our head. Flying in the jungle one day when I hit the transmitter, caught fire, and so I did not have a high frequency radio for a couple of days. It was very awkward flying in the jungle, not being able to communicate should we have to go down and have an emergency. I do remember when I tried to land at the military base out there in the jungle, they met us with a bunch of jeeps and machine guns on the runway. As they did not know who we were, supposedly we could have been drug runners, especially when they see a 500-pound bomb casing strapped to the bottom of our aircraft, painted was a red Dayglow. They were a little nervous. Don't blame them. Here we're picking up fuel at the Pastaza, right on the right at the line was the Andes. And used the old chamois to make sure there was no water. Gentleman there rode on the airplane with me. He was from the Ecuadorian Air Force, and his orders were to take the reel of film that we were actually taking a picture of the jungle every 6 seconds from the bottom of the aircraft, and it was his job to take that back to headquarters. They would analyze it and give us a copy. Well, my orders were to make sure that he did not get it, and took him out to dinner and gave him a couple of good drinks, and swapped the reel, and left the country. And I don't know, guess he found himself in a lot of trouble when he did not find the right film. And it's another story. But they weren't about to spend all this money and give the Ecuadorian government the know-how as to where all this oil was. That's a Auca hut, headhunter. Very rare. You fly out there, and then occasionally you run into one or two. This is exactly the area where Nate Saint, the missionary, was butchered by the Aucas. That's Sangay. We would always pass it climbing out through the valley on our left. I made sure the weather was good when I was in that area. I knew of a couple of aircraft that flew into it or around it. Had a lot of respect for it. Those days we did a lot of time and distance flying. There's the Aria Comet 4 at the terminal in Quito, Ecuador. This is 1968. We had just come back from the jungle, and one of the boys there had picked up a tiger, and we were all trying to figure out how he was going to get it back to the States. We had lunch with our station manager, and he had an ocelot in his backyard, and we went over and played with it. There's a good shot of it. There I am with a cat. Good shot of the Napo River. Big as the Mississippi. We would use it to navigate. The only instrument for navigation was time and distance, or occasionally the ADF whenever we'd get a signal from the military station. Other than that, we were on our own. I recall when the mechanic who ran the generator that produced power for the ADF, seeing that it was late in the afternoon, almost evening, the plane had not arrived, figured he had gone somewhere else, decided to pull the switch and go home, and the pilot was on his way to the airport and got lost and crashed into the jungle. So we were always very concerned. Okay, here we go to a little treat for you. This is Mazatlan. We have 16 millimeter home movies I carried a camera in the cockpit and took these shots coming in for landing in Mazatlan. We were on our way back to Ecuador. Please excuse the jittery there, but rather than cut this and edit these scenes, I decided to keep them. That DC-6 was a Mexican airliner who was taking off and his nose gear collapsed. We picked up fuel in Mazatlan, and we then headed on south to Acapulco and spent the night. And like I said earlier in my slide presentation, we had orders to return to Houston, and we sat in Houston for a week till we get the consular papers and headed down to Belize. This is Belize, where we are picking up fuel, and then we head south to San Jose, Costa Rica. We overflew San Pedro Sula, Tegucigalpa. Here we are in downtown Quito, Ecuador. Again, this is 1968, and I am back for the second tour. The first one was the State Department, and this is the one we were contracted by the company to do magnetometer work in the jungle. Again, I left the scenes rather than edit them out. This was taken right from the Hotel Quito where we stayed, and that is Quito there. And we're flying south out of Quito, and up ahead when we are close to Cotopaxi, we make a left turn and head east, right straight into the jungle. We spent the first part of the tour in Pastaza and returned up here to Quito for maintenance and R&R. Again, this is the maintenance of the 411. I was both pilot and mechanic on the aircraft. Saved the company the money of having a mechanic ride along, so it was like a 2-for-1 deal. There's an old Ecuadoriana C-46, the type of aircraft that I used to fly for Intermountain back in Arizona. And we're now again in the jungle. This is at Pastaza, where we would pick up fuel, and it was all chimneyed to make sure that we had no water. We also ran into a couple of people who were from Africa who were in the area coming in to plant tea, because over in the Congo at that time there had been quite a slaughter of the white people. This is the famous Napo River, and right up ahead is Palm Beach, where Nate Saint was killed. And if you make a right turn, you're in Auca headhunter country. We had a little problems late in the afternoon trying to get into Quito. The weather was very bad, and we always had picked out this missionary field as an emergency, and we're about ready to put it to use. And we circled it a couple of times to make sure that we could get in and out, and no problem getting in. But once we got in there, we realized the grass was very, very high. The missionary lady there was from the States, and always had a tradition that they greet you with cookies and lemonade. Nothing stronger than lemonade. Looking at the trees at the end, and on takeoff, believe it or not, we did hit the trees, the top of the limbs. And when landed in Quito, control tower, when the gear dropped down, we dropped some leaves, and they made a remark that we had brought the jungle with us. When I was in South America, I made a habit, because of my Spanish, to go up to the control tower and greet the boys in the tower and introduce myself. Paid off many times. It was good public relations, and they were not only hearing a voice, but they had a face. Okay, we're about ready to head home, and we're climbing out. And again, this concludes the Cessna 411 series. Shortly after returning to Tucson, my chief pilot Captain Stud Livingston took the 411 and had an accident, lost his life, and that was the end of the aircraft. On my right is the volcano in Guatemala, and again, that's it. I've enjoyed producing this for you. I hope you've enjoyed the scenery down in Ecuador. Goodbye.